Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 95. I'm Enigmaeus and today we're redoing the bridge. And when I say redoing, that's exactly what I mean. See, the last episode we left off, we were just getting ready to start extending this hallway away from the main structure of the ship and then putting the bridge on the end of it. And I spent all this time working on that, and this is what I came up with. And I was not happy with it at all. So I pulled it all apart and we're going to redo it. I had the other version of the bridge all ready to go with the video episode. This is how I built it. And I realized that if I did upload that video, I would be uploading content that I knew would be obsolete with the next episode, because I'd already decided that I absolutely would be dismantling that whole assembly and starting over. So it's taken a little bit longer to get this one out, but it's not been too bad. One of the things that I noticed the last episode that you may remember if you saw it is the opening that we had from the main structure of the ship that was going to be moving forward to the bridge. It was a very large square, and in looking at it, putting the video together to upload with the thumbnail and all that stuff, I realized that this square opening was just much too large. I wouldn't be able to do the transitions that I wanted to do with the bridge pod the size that I wanted to make it, and the only way then to correct the issue was to start the transitions back at the main portion of the ship, make the opening smaller. It's now more rectangular, it's narrower by quite a bit, and also a little bit shorter. It'll be easier to work with without having to have this gigantic bridge pod at the front of the ship just to make up for the size of the hallway leading to it. We're just going to do a little bit of detailing here, knock the rough edges off the corners, put in some softer corners, a little bit easier on the eyes. One of the things that I noticed in this whole process is that I started doing this very much by the seat of my pants. I had the basic idea of how I was going to correct the issue of the ugly previous bridge and how I was going to correct the issue of the gigantic square opening, but all of the specific details in terms of the functionality of what I was building, I hadn't quite worked out yet. So you'll end up seeing a couple of things that we do, and then we change them on the fly and kind of bring them a little bit closer to what we need them to be. One of those is the placement of the guns. Now, we aren't going to be placing any guns in this episode. We're probably not going to be doing any until the ship is pretty much complete structurally. But the whole idea is that we've got places all over the ship where we can place turrets, and turrets are very convenient because you don't have to worry about how they're oriented. They just kind of spin around and shoot at what they can shoot at. And that's very good. But for the static guns like railguns, we have to be a little bit more careful. There's two considerations that I've learned, and I've discussed these in the past, but for those who have missed those discussions, it bears repeating because they're pretty important. One is that if you want to hit things accurately, all of your guns have to be clustered as close together as possible, because there's no correction for where the projectiles are going to hit relative to your crosshair, relative to where the guns are firing from. So if we put all of our guns close together, then even if you don't hit the targets, the projectiles are all at least going to be going into the roughly the same area. That's pretty important to get the most out of the ammunition that you're firing off into space as you possibly can. The other consideration is the crosshair, and the crosshair is basically placed relative to the cockpit's position, the cockpit that you're sitting in when you're firing. And if you don't have the guns close to the cockpits, you can be shooting at things lined up perfectly in the crosshair and the guns won't hit because the crosshair isn't lined up with the guns, it's lined up with the cockpit. So if we can put the cockpit as close as possible to the guns and we make sure that the guns are all clustered together, we get a much better experience in terms of being able to hit targets reliably, without having to spend a lot of time thinking about offsets and all these other different things. And because of course the guns are clustered together, we get more bang for our buck when we're firing, because we can hit precise areas wherever we want to shoot and have all of those projectiles, or most of them, make a solid impact. So that's kind of the consideration here. And for me, for whatever reason, I don't even know, that's not a word, that's guaranteed not a word. For whatever reason, I have this fixation on mounting static guns to the underside of the cockpit, or the underside of the bridge, as the case may be. And then they're close to the cockpit, they're close to one another. It works well, but in this instance, the way that I've set this up, I wasn't thinking about guns when I put everything together. And if I were to mount guns to the underside of that little platform that I've already placed, they will be blocking off the hangar door, which is not allowed. It's not allowed. Not a difficult thing to fix, not a bad thing to fix. The solution is we're just going to put in a second floor in this bridge pod. The upper floor is where the cockpit will be, and the lower area, that's what we've got in place now, is where the guns will be, and that will be the solution to that issue. Not a difficult fix. The other thing that I wanted to point out and kind of discuss in this episode, because it was fresh on my mind based on what I've been doing between recording sessions, is trying to get our last CV completely taken apart, get all of the last containers off of it, get all of the last blocks off of it so that we can reuse them and just be done with it, have that ship completely dismantled. It's the containers that are being a little bit problematic. Currently, the game doesn't allow for rapid automatic transfer of things from one container to another, like you have in games that offer things like tubes or conveyors or things like that. Yet, as far as I know, the developers have said that they plan to incorporate this into the game. They're working on it. It's just not there yet, so we don't have to worry too much about it for the future. But for now, I've spent 90 minutes transferring things from inventories in our capital vessel to our base for long-term storage, and that was just the 4 fridges that I had in our last capital vessel, full of vegetables that we had grown and all the other food that we had picked up along the way. It took a long time. And I know, or at least I know that there was a feature or a part of the UI that would allow you to do things all from one UI element without having to actually run back and forth between the physical containers in the game. I've never been a fan of that. It strikes me as only a little bit cheaty. It's not, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. It's a feature that's in the game now, and it's a reasonable stand-in, I suppose, for not having those tubes and other automated systems to move things around. So I'm not criticizing anyone who's choosing to use it, but just for me and my approach, it just never really felt quite right. So I do spend that extra time running back and forth between containers. It's my own fault for doing it that way in light of an alternative. But it's something to consider now with this entire process, that I'm the guy who builds a ship, uses it for 2 hours, and then parks it until I build a replacement for that ship. It's just the way that I do things. So I need to be careful about how I'm managing my inventory and not treat a capital vessel like a permanent fixture where I can just dump everything into the containers and not have to worry about it again until I need those specific things, in which case they'll be there for me. It would make a lot more sense if I were to make occasional trips back to a permanent base and offload my stuff there so that I don't have to worry about what happens when I decide I want to replace the capital vessel, because it will happen, and it will happen sooner than one might think. That having been said, you can see it's daytime now. What's left of that capital vessel tipped over on the ground. As soon as I started getting rid of the last parts of the garden, it just tipped over. To hell with this. I'm not even trying to stand right side up anymore. So it's there. It's going to take me a while to strip it apart, but we've still got some blocks that we can get out of it, and it'll be worthwhile to just get it done. You can see here, this is around the point when I realized we were going to have to split the bridge pod into 2 floors. So I'm kind of getting rid of some of this stuff on the bottom because it's going to be a very different structure on the underside now that we're going to have that just for the guns. And then we'll kind of mess around and we'll get a few more things in place. We'll put that second floor in, get everything ready. In the next episode, we're basically going to be focused entirely on finishing off this forward bridge pod structurally, get the area in place for where we can put the guns. When we're ready to start mounting guns, we'll get the bridge area basically closed in. We won't necessarily do the detailing on the outside. We're going to do a little bit now. We're going to put a couple of raised sections just as a test, but we'll be leaving the majority of the cosmetic working until later on when most of the structure of the entire ship is complete. And then once we've got this front section done, then we'll move to the back section. We basically got to allow for our forward propulsion thrusters in the back section, of course. And also we've got those large curved wing sort of like things. If you've been watching since the beginning of this mini-series, you saw me do the profile pretty early on. Those are still waiting to be completed. And then we've got some more thrusters to place. We need to have our lateral movement thrusters and also our descent thrusters and our reverse thrusters that we can all put into place once we get a better idea of how the whole ship is shaping up. And then it'll be done. We'll do the cosmetic stuff. We'll get the inside containers in place, and it'll be done. So if you want to be notified about the next episode and future episodes, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Got a couple minutes left. You can watch what's going on here before it cuts to the end slate. So feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.